Hey Ed,
Hey, how you doing today?
thank you. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. It took us a while to get here. Sorry about all of that.
I think I figured out what happened. Let me
Oh,
see. Let me put on Do Not Disturb. Can you hear me okay?
yep, I can hear you well.
Yeah, I kept clicking OK when it said permissions. I thought it was changing it automatically. I guess it wanted me to go into the permissions menu and
Oh,
change.
okay.
That
Yeah.
seems to be the problem.
Okay. No, I understand for sure. But definitely welcome to the show. I appreciate you taking your time out today to be here. And looking forward. We can jump right into it.
I'm flattered you'd ask. Yeah, what would you like to know?
Yeah, so definitely start off. You'll start off telling people a little bit about yourself, but before you tell about yourself, I'll introduce you. Just to kind of let how I came across you was just mainly like everyone else probably here in the DMV is through Twitter. And I remember coming across Twitter, you're seeing all the different updates, and you're learning like, oh my God, you're getting everything in real time. And prior to the interview, I did do research, and I thought like maybe it's something that you just started, but you've been around for quite a while, I see.
Oh yeah, yeah. I I got started back in the days of I don't know if you're familiar. You may not be old enough, but the old text pagers back in the late '80s.
Yeah. I was looking at some of the stuff on your website, and I saw you interned at WSA in '92. That's actually the year I was born.
But yeah, and when I interned at Channel 9, I was so envious where they got those Motorola Advisor text pagers, and this is back before text messaging was so popular, and before everyone had cell phones. And yeah, this was so cool to have these one-way receivers that you get these text messages on. And it wasn't soon afterward that networks started to pop up a little bit like Twitter, where
Uh-huh.
people like me who were sending out messages to groups of people. And we had one group back in the late '80s, early '90s called the Public Safety Network in the Washington area. And we had a good following. I mean, not like we do on Twitter, but it was decent. A few people from the media, a lot of ambulance chasers, insurance companies, things like that.
Right. Understood. Now, after learning about your journalism background and the scanners, I know you have a big background in information systems and things like that. Um, just with this information that you're putting out and being put out in real time, and I also want to kind of get into. I know you may have some positive feedback, but I know there's also negative feedback as well. But just kind of jump in talking about, the importance of. I know you, from what I read, you started off kind of doing it out of fun, but the importance of getting this information and getting out to the public, because I know there's been information about MPD scanners being encrypted, and that's been like a whole nother debate. So kind of talk about your angle with approaching to make sure this information get to the public in real time.
Right. It's a good point. It occurred to me some time ago. Unfortunately, having worked in the local media in Washington, a lot of they're tied up with a lot of big stories, especially now. If you look at a typical newscast, it's COVID, it's January 6th, it's Ukraine. These smaller stories that really worry people. Gunshots. I get 2, 3 messages a day from people
Yeah.
hearing gunshots in their neighborhood. They want to know why all that fire trucks and ambulances are down the street. Common message we get, and this is I'm trying to help. Yeah, having worked at Channel 9, so I take care of mom full time now, and I like to at least keep my name out there and be an active participant in the news gathering process. I uh, I think I have from my years of experience, I can help answer some of these questions people are having.
Absolutely. And that's interesting. So you were saying, you'll get people to kind of actually reach out to you asking about, about like, balance and different things that are going on in their neighborhoods.
Number one concern are sounds of gunshots, explosions, police cars and fire trucks parked down the street. And it's not just me; it's my colleagues too, Larry, Derek, and
Right.
Phyllis and Cordell. Uh,
Yeah, I saw that. Different people, the freelancers that you work with. Now, with that being said, and with people who want to know and want that transparency, even for myself, because it's gotten to the point now where if I want to know what's going on, usually I might type in Fox 5. Usually I might go on the app, but like I just type your name in to see what's going on in the city. And usually, I'm sending it out to the family members and letting them know what is going on. So kind of talk about, as I mentioned with MPD and maybe some of the feedback of, elected officials where, I was reading that some people were making a point of saying like, hey, we want to encrypt these radios because we don't want the bad guys to get a hold of them though. But on the other end, I look at it as, the community is being aware of this information. So could you just kind of talk about, like your, I would say your thought process on that? Like if today, if this was to stop today where you weren't able to get these messages, like, and from your perspective, how would that hurt the public?
Oh, if everything left that hasn't already encrypted, I mean, we're already against major challenges as far as police encryption.
Hmm.
Some jurisdictions across America have encrypted everything.
Yeah, I
That
saw
that
that. I saw. I think Vegas and Tennessee were some of the most recent ones, states who did that.
uh, for everything, yeah, but there's several examples of jurisdictions like Orange County. They've, I guess, done everything, but it's unusual to have a jurisdiction that's encrypted everything. But it shows that we're going into a dangerous direction, I suspect, and that's what the problem is. It's a matter of control. It's not officer safety. It's not privacy. The main concern is control. If you're
Yeah.
a PR person and you come in and you say, "How are we going to control the message? We don't want people to be calling us with this stuff at weird hours, asking about shootings and stuff. Just going to control the message. We're going to give out the information. It's not going to. They're not going to come to us and
Right.
ask." And that's what general consensus is. I mean, the reason behind the reason. And
Yeah.
so, what can we do? I mean, we have no legal justification to access information that that's encrypted. We're at the mercy of the PR people, really.
Hmm. No, definitely. I agree. And that's kind of leads to my next question I had was just, have you identified a way of, your position can kind of help fight the crime and help the community? Just meaning that, since you are so transparent, have you connected with like, different ANC and different community leaders that are dealing with a lot of those issues that, you report out?
Oh, I hear all of us hear quite often from the ANC commissioners in particular in Washington.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, some regular ones, and they're quite active on Twitter. In ANC6, and you see them all the time on there, and they're in the same. I guess there there's a controversy in Washington about
Yeah.
exactly how do you handle the crime problem, or is there even a crime problem? And
Hmm.
and if you look at it's really the moderates versus the progressives, because there are really
Hmm.
not many conservatives at all in
Yeah.
Washington. Not like New York. It's interesting to see the debate too, because it's not really along racial lines. It's more along political lines, and you
Yeah.
find a lot of black brothers, the guys, saying throw the book at them, and yet the white girls, oh no, no, no. Yeah. So you have this rift, and it's between the progressives and the moderates, clearly in Washington,
Yeah.
and I feel the frustration from the people, and I sometimes get pulled into it. They accuse us of over publicizing crime.
Hmm.
It's not that bad. It's actually been worse. We're in well, we call them crime deniers,
Yeah.
but it, it, they look at it differently than we do. I mean, there's like you look at it half full, half empty type argument.
Hmm. No, no, I definitely get that. And I think, and I, can see because it definitely, the information that's going out there, it's more of a, as you said, now in DC, everyone is asking, how do you stop the crime? Is it getting better? Or, someone may have a press conference and say, hey, it's getting better, but then we may look at your timeline from the last 6, 7 hours, and that may tell a different story. So I definitely could see how that, is a thing that, where they're kind of irritated with. Now, I also wanted to ask, because when I, follow you and I see the things coming on the timeline, and myself being from DC, you have, I saw that you went to school here, been for a while. Do you ever get emotionally impacted by some of the stories that come across your channel? When you listen to those channels?
Yeah, it can be frustrating sometimes. I would say I get this question often from people. And I think it's a lot like watching the newscast.
Hmm.
And if you don't know the people personally, it's not so bad. Or if you know the business involved or the people involved, and then it becomes more troubling for you, you know. But otherwise, it's a lot like watching the newscast, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think about that when just thinking about, because some of the stories, some things, especially when you see children, teenagers, juveniles getting killed in those things. But since you've been in the media here in DC for such a long time, and kind of something you just said earlier was like, is there a crime problem? From your experience, maybe 10, 20 years ago, from your perspective, would you say that the crime is worse than it was, maybe 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah, people keep bringing up the 1990s, the early 90s, late 80s. I guess when we had the trouble I'm trying to remember what years it was in the 90s. You remember Rifle Edmond and all the,
Yeah, yeah, during the crack epidemic. Yep.
yeah, and then looking at it then versus now, I think a lot of the comparisons are interesting that, while the murder rate may be soaring, not nearly as bad as it was then, but the reason why people are getting killed now is much different, it seems, according to that report that came out,
Hmm.
district government a few months ago.
Yeah.
It, People are not being killed so much now for drugs or money. It's over petty disputes, either
Yeah.
individual or among the group. Those are the top three reasons that people are getting murdered in Washington or
Hmm.
shot. It's not a gang. It's not business anymore. It's a personal beef.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we will see that a lot of argument, parking spot. I mean, it gets crazy. Definitely, definitely. And just wanted to, curious as far as with the brand and the Twitter. I saw you on Instagram, so you have YouTube as well. Do you have plans to kind of like expanding this, or is Twitter like continuing to be your main platform as far as just getting that info out?
Yeah, we've all been struggling with trying to figure out where to go, and it's interesting because you have different demographics and different regions. If you look at I'm often in Delaware, and they're almost crime news in particular is on Facebook, heavily on Facebook, very little on Twitter by comparison. And here in Washington, is mainstream, I guess, is Twitter. But if you look at say the black neighborhoods and the other, they're heavily into Instagram, and you get a lot of good information on Instagram, I think, and tips. For example, Villas, he does the Mogo PG. He's always getting good stuff from the and Derek from Kilmo News. He gets very well attached to the community that way. The thing is, I don't know, with social media apps. I would love to be able to send to Instagram and Twitter at the same time.
Yeah.
I guess it's easier to go from Instagram to Twitter,
Yeah, yeah. When you tweet from Instagram, you could connect it to your Twitter, and then it'll tweet everything right out.
but we don't have anything. I can't find anything that will go the other way, and it would be ideal for me.
Right. And I'm sure there has to be something out there.
So, I always make the comparison of social media is a lot like drugs, that it
Yeah.
varies, it varies depending on the demographic and geography. And what's the drug of choice, or here I think for news in Washington, it's Twitter right now.
Okay. Yeah, and I think Twitter is more, people go to Twitter more for news and updates, and now they added where you can add to the story and those type of things. I mean, I honestly use Twitter a lot if it's when the Chris Rock and Will Smith thing happened, or if something relevant is going on. When you go to that search engine, it's going to bring up everything through there. So I can see that how Twitter's one, for sure. Yeah.
But I think if we're in a different geographical area, and different country, different part of the United States, and different demographics, they would be saying, well, no, we use Instagram, we use WhatsApp. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
it's you kind of go where the market is. I would love to get into other social media platforms, but
Yeah.
it's so much to try to transfer information and then to handle it, the messages coming back.
Hmm. Absolutely. And one thing, Alan, too, I noticed when I first started following it, I noticed that you have you've worked in Rehoboth, Delaware. You have like the ties up there.
Right, right. I do a report for WGMD during the summer.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm very familiar with Rehoboth. I went to school in Dover, Delaware State University.
Oh, a small
Yeah.
world.
Yeah,
Right.
so we would go to Rehoboth outlets, every weekend, the beach, the food. That was like a go-to spot for us. It's not that much in Delaware, so as a college kid, that was like amazing for us.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of college kids come to Rehoboth, and they're often in the news. Many of them.
Right. And I
And
know, yeah, and I know it's two different type of cities from size to politics, whatever. But have you ever, just in your years of journaling, have you kind of noticed maybe some similarities between, up there in Delaware and DC, whether it's through media, whether it's through politics? I mean, I know it's totally different type of towns, but anything that you kind of like see the similar or major differences that stick out?
it's sort of a small country town on the ocean versus
Yeah.
a Washington, D.C. And the similarities. That's an interesting thought. Uh,
Because I wonder, is the demand for transparency,
yeah,
high there as it is here in DC?
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess the demand versus what we're actually getting, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and as I always say, and that applies to there as well as here, transparency is a wonderful thing until it's you they want to see through, and then all of a sudden, once you become mayor or whatever, the whole idea is, well, oh wait, yeah, we
Yeah.
don't, it's fine, we don't need it anymore. We're good, man. I'm in here. Trust me. So, so I think that's probably the general theme is that transparency is wonderful unless it's you they're trying to see through.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, because I mean, those stories, and sometimes you see it, it's like wow. And I know a lot of times when you're reporting out, it's like sometimes nonstop, nonstop. But I think it sticks out to me so much because I had an experience one time where I was actually working in the government, and you would find out about just all the things going on in the city, and there were some things that I would find out about, and I would be like, "Oh, I didn't see that on the news last night," or "I didn't see that on the news last night," and maybe because it wasn't a broad daylight shooting or it wasn't something so crazy, but I just started to see like, "Oh wow, there are things going on that I am, that isn't being reported all the time." So when you kind of did come on the scene, I was like, "Wow, we're getting everything." And I think it also came to like, whoa, like we're getting so much because you're like, there's a lot going on in your city, but then you look and you're like, geez, like, Uber driver, fire, school shooting. And one thing too I like about it is that you cover the entire DMV. So it's like you're not specifically focusing on DC because myself being a DC native, of course, I'm more concerned about DC, but I've learned alone just through your page of, the increase in violence that's been occurring in PG County, which has been outrageous almost.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, most of our tweets or whatever, just news dispatches are really focused by default over Washington and Prince George's County.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know what we're how we can possibly get uh, things back on track, and it's going to take a lot of work for to get the crime down. Because the other jurisdictions, Fairfax, Arlington, Alexander, and Montgomery, by comparison, it's not like we're not listening to them, but we're just not have the volume of information coming out of there.
Right, 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 right. Definitely, definitely understand. Now, also wanted to ask, just with your brand, your career, being in working in the journalism field for so many years. One thing about this platform, is Dreams by Any Means Motivation Station. The main purpose of this platform is providing people with that inspiration and motivation to kind of apply to their lives. So, not just specifically someone that wants to go into journalism, but for someone that wants to really be passionate about something, stick to something, build their brand, work with their friends in that lane. We call this a any means moment. Could you just kind of just share to some of the listeners, advice on how to just really stick with something, getting something off the ground? I mean, because you're reporting crime, someone may want to start reporting something totally different, but like just kind of giving advice on how to stay steady with something and continue to grow.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I do this out of as something I enjoy doing. It combines my different expertise or different experiences and things that and also being a full-time caregiver for my mother, I can do this from home. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. I'm able to keep my feet wet. I'm able to share my expertise, I feel, in certain areas like radio communication, as well as experience with dealing with the police and fire departments in the Washington area. So you look for something you have a passion in, and like you said, it doesn't have to be a crime or public safety or even reporting. But if you look at all the great videos too, even on YouTube like yours, and it's people who have an interest in something, and their willingness to document it and share it with others. And the thing is, do you do it for money? Do you do it just for enjoyment, or for ego, or for passion?
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of people though, you got to watch out. It doesn't consume you because you spend a lot of time just checking your messages all day long,
Right,
and
right.
so that's probably the biggest problem. You know, with this whole idea. I mean, you got to make sure it doesn't consume you.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Now, this is also, I'm just actually thinking as we're talking. So, say in a perfect world, and I say a perfect world because, say if all the crime decides to cease, say if house fires and things stop and all those type of things stop, what would you decide to put out then?
Oh, you think if you, that's a good question, and we have no problem coming up with interesting stories. I
Okay.
mean, cat up the tree stuff,
Yeah.
keys in the sewer. I mean, it's sort of like a news du jour. It's just, with the next item on down the list, and
Right,
you
right,
know,
right.
whether it's protesters shutting down the highway. I mean, we come up with some oddball stories that are compelling,
Yeah.
and that's what happens. You just push up the next compelling story that comes along. So it doesn't have to be doom and gloom all the time. No.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why definitely glad to be able to interview because I said once I did my research, I've learned that you had a background in journalism. So I thought, like I said, I thought maybe you just picked up your phone, you're just tweeting out everything that's coming across the radio. But then I started to learn about how you've been doing this for a while. You've been working through the posts, been featured in Time, worked at Examiner, all those different type of things. So really got to see like, okay, this is someone who really knows, what they're talking about. And I think maybe that's why I think online when I see interacting with other news outlets or the feedback you get from people, I think you're probably well received as well because you have experience in that lane where you also know how to kind of move and communicate to the public, from a media perspective.
Yeah, thank you. It's one of those things. We're not, and this is true for all my colleagues and I. We're not traditional journalists in this style of reporting where you go to the local governments and say, hey, what's the story here?
Right.
And if we were, we would be reporting the same, news everyone else is, and that.
Yeah.
So we're out there in the cutting edge. We're doing. Yeah, it has a certain volatility to it. You risk screwing up, making more mistakes. It's like a wire service versus a newspaper.
Yeah.
And, and you look at the tradition of wire services, and they're usually given more leeway when it comes to court cases because they have the same restraints that we do. They're trying to get information out and trying to get the story started, essentially to get the snowball rolling.
Mhm.
And a lot of the stories would never make it, I think, to the television or the newspaper if it weren't for my colleagues and I out there, trying to get it initiated.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I agree, man. And like I said all the time, definitely thank you for the information and stuff that you do send out. Cause like I said, I share it with my mom, family members, your people going to work. And I think mainly the main thing, as we kind of just mentioned earlier about the violence and the things that took place, of course, back in the day and the drug wars, but the armed carjacking, as we see, that's really has been like super crazy. And it's not like it's we see women, young, older. We've had some unfortunate incidents where people lose their lives. So that's always something for me. As myself as being outside and moving around in DC, but specifically for my mom and my grandmom and those older folks and things like that. Even the other day we saw the two dogs, get robbed at gunpoint. Myself being a pet owner, so definitely appreciate you putting that information out because just I can tell you one of many people that information is being passed around. And I think it's just helping people stay on their P's and Q's when they're moving around.
Yeah, definitely to be people should be aware of their surroundings, and that should be the one of the most important themes that comes out of this, locking their doors, the obvious stuff, but uh, situational awareness, and don't put yourself at risk going into certain areas at certain times. If you see something that looks troubling, go down another street, avoid a conflict, and try to stay out of confrontation.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure, for sure. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you, Alan, coming on the show today. I'll give you this time if you have any information that you'd like the listeners to, know, but then always help you to, drop your social media handles so they can know where to follow you, staying up to date with the news. And you're always welcome to come back on the show.
I'm flattered to be on here today. Thank you. Yeah, and it's not just me and my colleagues too. You know who they are.
Yep.
We've got about half a dozen of us, and I like to think we support each other, inspire each other to try to fill in the gaps, and we don't get everything. Even all of us working together, we get some of it. And one thing I didn't mention is that we have our own Zello channel
Oh,
for news
nice.
and breaking news, and we love to have people who are interested on there, either just who want to listen, or people who perhaps want to help with the news process or see something. So we would be flattered to have them on there. Have them contact me or look for on Zello at Alan Henney for me, and I hook you up with my friends too.
Okay, absolutely. I'll definitely, some friends come to mind. I'll definitely send them your way for sure.
But I'm flattered to be on your show. Honored. Thank you for having me.
Okay, I appreciate it, Alan. You enjoy the rest of your day, your week, and sending well wishes over for Mom as well.
All right. We need it. Thank you. Take care.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye.